If you spend any decent amount of time on Warframe, then you have entered a clan dojo at one point or another, whether that was for a trade or to pick up some research to pave the way for a higher mastery rank. Now, you might be someone who has spent a considerable amount of time trying to construct and decorate a dojo, or you might be someone who's never given them a second glance. But I can promise you, almost none of you realize how much work has actually gone into dojos over the years. And for a game that's focuses on space ninjas murdering the universe, it's a lot more than you would think. I'll be outlining every significant change that has occurred in the dojo system since release, along with impacts from the community along the way. So let's start at the beginning with what is the dojo?
I don't know, like I feel like going on a rant, but it would be really laden with like crappy promises about it.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be cool if clans could own a part of the world? Wouldn't it be cool if clans could congregate at an area like a temple, like again in the vein of ninja or samurai fiction? So those are the sorts of things we want to do.
The dojo was first mentioned clear back in dev stream number 1 of February 27th, 2013. The game was 5 months into its infancy, with open beta release due 1 month later, and the community was asking for a way to give clans meaning. DE's answer was to provide the Clan Dojo as a project for clans to work towards together, along with what would later be dark sectors.
I mean, really, this is I think in the long term, this is the make or break for the game.
Yeah.
On May 23, 2013, Update 8 Rise of the Warlords released, along with the Dojo Builder Alpha. Dojo construction was the primary goal of this update, as the most common phrase used to describe the dojo building was user-created levels.
The potential that the creating the systems for the dojo has unlocked for us is the ability for players to make content for Warframe. So player-generated content in the future for Warframe is going to be incredible. The dojo is one example, but players making like levels with enemies in them and voting for which ones are the best and so on. Yep. You are using our procedural levels system. This uses all the same procedural level systems that all of the other tile sets do in the game. So this is, I think, the beginning of a very promising player-generated content system for Warframe. So that's kind of, I think, the direction.
The idea was that while a warlord might queue up a room for construction, it was the clan members that would vote with their resources for whether they actually wanted that room to be there. This brought the introduction of the research labs, which look a little different than what you know today, along with the Orokin-style dojo rooms that are pretty non-existent in today's dojos. The reason for that is while they were arguably cooler and more detailed than today's current rooms, they were also more rough. They were missing textures in some places, some things were floating and off the ground, and then in addition to that, they didn't line up when you had an extended layout, so they would practically collide when you went to build things out far enough. You couldn't loop your layout. These problems brought about a change 3 months later in Update 9.5 Operation Arid Fear, which introduced the dojo grid system and revamped all the existing dojo rooms. The old Orokin dojo style rooms were no longer available, and so only the people who had them at this time, 8 years ago, will have any of these rooms today. What followed after this up until 5 years later, on March 15th, 2018, is a period in which I believe DE was trying to figure out what they wanted dojos to be, and here are the changes that happened in that time. Now, as I said before, dojo construction was the name of the game. Dojo decorating technically existed, but it wasn't a focus, and it was extremely limited. The UI consisted of text across the middle of your screen, the camera was bound to your warframe, everything was surface snapped, if you know anything about decorating today. You could only rotate, scale, do a 1/4 meter grid snap, but only while shift was held, and then that was it. You couldn't duplicate, you couldn't do a whole lot of other stuff that you can do today. Simply trying to line things up was the most tedious thing you have ever seen. Thanks to Nooblitz here, I have an example of him trying to show people how to do this kind of stuff back then.
Give you more accurate positioning. Keep shift held down so it snaps to point. Then position a bell cord with a central line of a column. Then move the object forward until you're able to place it. This will be your starting position. From here I want to move mine 8 places forward. You need a really steady hand, and sometimes it might jump out of place, but a lower mouse speed and holding shift will help. And then when you reach a correct distance out, you place it. As you've done all the others in the same way, they all should be aligned up.
Decorations were restricted to the Tenno decorations, although they didn't have a whole lot at the time, and you also had to use the room console in order to access the decoration menu each time you wanted to place one. The decorations started to flow in, for example in Update 9, Vor's Revenge. Dojo statues were the first decorations to be added to the dojo. This also acted as a sign of their commitment to keep their decorations Tenno-centric, as on May 31st, a patch note mentions that couches were removed from the dojo because apparently they weren't ninja enough. It was after this that the practice of putting in a dojo trophy decoration for every event that occurred was implemented. Update 10 Shadows of the Dead on September 14th, 2013 brought the Zen Garden room along with the Zen Garden decorations along with taiko drums and a few more statues. The drums prompted a contest which inevitably led to the Tenno teabagging drums into submission. October 9th, 2013 brought the kind of key addition that destroying a decoration will give you your resources back. Up until this point, your resources were actually lost. Update 11 Valkyrie Unleashed on November 21st of 2013 introduced the trading kiosk and the trading system to the dojo, bringing a lot more relevance there since it was released. Update 11.3.0 in December that same year made it so that way when you were going to place a decoration, instead of seeing the constant unfunded state, you would actually see the preview of what it would look like after it was funded. Another change that came in December was the room limit being increased to 100. As for what the room limit was before that point, unfortunately I was not able to find. Update 12 Zephyr Rises introduced the garden rooms and also a unfinished proof of concept room for the large garden that happened to slip through, which was removed a month later. Update 13 Dark Sectors on April 10th, 2014 brought a lot of goodies for the dojo. The first and foremost obvious is the Orokin Lab pertaining to the Dark Sectors at the time. It also brought the Temple of Honor room, which was intended for your trophies from your events. It also brought the Observatory, which didn't have the function to be used as navigation at the time, by the way, along with 7 new dojo gardens. These were the large gardens that slipped through before. They didn't have a whole lot of capacity because, as the hotfix 13.0.6 April 17th showed, the capacity was increased to 30. Now I don't know what capacity they had prior to this point, but I don't think it's relevant considering that the increase was to 30. Update 14 The Mad Cephalon on July 18th, 2014 brought the actual start of decoration mode. So instead of having to go to the console every time you wanted to get a decoration, you instead could press escape and then go to decorate and just pull it from there instead. Hotfix 14.2.3 as well as 0.4 was the first and only time that they ever increased red zones in terms of where you could place decorations. They decided to make certain areas invalid and restrict player capability in terms of decoration placement. Dojos were getting expansive enough that in update 14.7.0 Operation Gate Crash in September of 2014, they added the teleporter decoration to help you navigate your dojo. In the Arcwing update of October 2014, this isn't quite relevant to the dojo, but this is also when they happened to add the first option to customize the inside of your lisette, and the first decorations that you were able to place in there were bobbleheads. Hotfix 15.5.5 on December 1st of 2014 introduced the annual holiday decorations, though they had accidentally slipped through a month before. Update 15.6.0 introduced the polychrome, referred to as dojo painting at the time, which would allow you to change the room coloring. On March 11th, 2016, the Dojo Dress-Up Contest was launched. This is the first contest that actually had to do with dojo decoration itself, and while the entries, as you can see, weren't particularly fantastic, I think it was the first indicator that DE could see where players actually wanted to make something with what they had. They just didn't have the tools to do it well. Update 19, The War Within, on November 12th, 2016, introduced the actual decorator mode. Before, they made it so that way all you had to do was hit escape in order to go and select a decoration. Now they made it so you had a perpetual mode to stay in order to pull up a decoration instead of having to exit the actual placement mode each time to pull one up. Update 20 on March 24th, 2017 undid the red zone additions that they had added before, trying to give ease of access for decoration placement. On January 20th of 2018, Ajangome released his first YouTube video showcasing an Ayatan tiger versus an Ayatan dragon. It may not seem terribly impressive to today's works. It was made in the initial decoration UI and functions, meaning this was actually a royal pain in the ass to build. He wouldn't know it yet, but later he would go on to be the only Warframe partner to get there because of his dojo works. He would also become the standard for good dojo decoration. On December 15th, 2017, in DevStream 103, we got a quick hushed mention of a new decoration placement system that was on the way. Then 4 months later, on March 15th, 2018, update 22.16.0 Shrine of the Eidolon, we got the Dojo Remaster Part 1. This offered a huge change to the decoration UI and functions, adding in a camera that was no longer bound to your Warframe. You could move up or down and all around. This gave you billboard facing, this gave you push and pull, it gave you surface snapping or free placement, meaning you could place things into air instead of having to surface snap it to everything and build structures from the ground up. And then it gave you a cycled grid snap with the 1/10 of a meter, quarter meter, and full meter options we have today. This also brought 60 new decorations at the time, consisting of the Corpus and Grineer factions and the beginning of the atmospheric section. This also greatly increased the decoration capacity of most rooms in the dojo and added the capability for personal decorations to be placed in the dojo as well. This also added the navigation function to the observatory, making it a lot more relevant of a room. Apparently, the initial push and pull system used a 1 meter snap with no choice to remove that, and in hotfix 22.16.3 they changed it to a free range movement system instead of that 1 meter snap. Update 22.20.0 on May 17th, 2018, Beasts of the Sanctuary added the Dojo Remaster Part 2. This brought the lighting remaster, which added the actual room lighting controls function to the polychrome. This also added the custom obstacle course. This added a lot more Tenno decorations for the Tenno faction and 54 Orokin decorations that did not exist before. Hotfix 22.20.7 on May 30th, 2018 was actually the first resource rebalance for dojo decoration. They cut the Oxium cost for decorations in half and refunded the difference to clans. Hotfix 22.20.8 added the contribute all resources function for each decoration. Now this isn't quite the contribute all they were hoping for, but it still made it a lot easier than adding each resource individually every time you went to fund a single decoration. On June 3rd, 2018, a player by the name of San Liqueur went ahead and compiled a forum post of every single cool dojo find they had. This wasn't particularly significant, however, it brought a lot of people together that wouldn't have otherwise found each other. One of which was X-Force, who had launched the old IKEA Frame Discord, and while it would fade from view and he would no longer play the game, it still served a purpose of bringing a dojo community together at the time. On August 1st, David Sudo was the first player to get outstanding recognition publicly from DE. They had been visiting dojos on primetime for the past several weeks after the remaster content had dropped. However, this was the first time that they actually bothered to go out of their way to recognize someone for it and visited his dojo on primetime the next day. A few days later, DE put out that they'd be working on a dojo contest for featured dojos to be shown on the star chart. In that same dojo visit, they mentioned a Deduminator who made a 2B holding up the dojo. On August 13th, 2018, a player named Sam Greystone would publish a video of their dojo that would become the great-granddaddy of all Orokin dragons, along with the 4 sacred beasts. This video got a lot of exposure, and has probably been copied into oblivion since then, but the reason I mention everyone that I have so far is I believe they are all directly responsible for what comes next. Update 23.4.0 on August 16th, 2018 brought the natural decorations section, along with the first recorded instance of the rotation bug. And normally I don't think a bug would make it into a history video, however this bug was a particular fiend. It would make it so simply by changing the axis of rotation on an object, or picking it up if you had any kind of rotation snap applied at all, would shift it by an increment that wasn't even part of the rotation snap system. On September 28th, 2018, after the devs have seen a culmination of interest and vigor in the dojo community regarding the dojo decoration that had been released, the devs decided to push ahead with the featured dojo contest. However, the first one was referred to as the Remaster Contest, and was a test to see the community's participation and interest in such a thing. However, they received an overwhelming 640 different clan entries wanting to feature their dojos. As such, it has remained and is rehosted every quarter for 4 contests a year. Update 23.10 The Chimera on October 12th, 2018 added 40 atmospheric decorations and a couple more regular ones, along with the Inspiration Hall for the first time, which at that time was not capped to the 3 limit that we have today. This also added the duplication function to the dojo and the orbiter, meaning if you wanted wanted to replicate an object at the size and rotation that it was placed at, you can simply press F and create another. Hotfix 23.10.5 added the note beacon decoration to orbiters. This was the first decoration that could display text in the orbiter or the dojo. Update 24, the launch of Fortuna, on November 8th, 2018, came with a couple new pigments, which was fantastic and all, but this also capped the limit on inspiration halls and custom obstacle courses to 3 and 5 respectively. And then on a minuscule note in the patch notes, they mentioned that they added an option to move decorations along a single axis of X, Y, and Z for fine position tuning. This is what we know today as constrained movement and would revolutionize dojo decorating forever. Everything that comes in this period isn't necessarily a bad change or addition, it's just that nothing in this actually changed how decoration as a whole worked. After we had just gotten a whole lot of improvements, we were hopeful that we would continue to get changes to make things better for us, but instead all we got were different colors and rooms to play with. This ends up leading to some frustration later, but we'll get to that in a bit. Hotfix 24.2.1 added the Attributa decoration to the dojo. This was a decoration that didn't require you to pay plat in order to display text, and this would also lead to some very interesting applications down the line. Hotfix 25.0.4 on the Jovian Concord added the fast travel option for the Clan Dojo labs. For everyone's sanity, this was a fantastic move. Update 25.7.0 on August 29th, 2019, the Infested decoration set was added to the game. On Hotfix 26.0.7, the Old Blood the Crimson branch was added to the game as well. Update 26, Rising Tide, added the Dry Dock to the dojo. And on 26.1 in November that same year, they changed the room limit in dojos from 100 to 128 to accommodate for the new Crimson Branch and Dry Dock editions. Update 27.3.0, Operation Scarlet Spear on March 24th added the Sentient decorations to the dojo. On April 9th, 2020, the Spring 2020 featured dojo contest was announced. The only difference with this one versus prior contests was that Ajin Gom was brought in as a guest judge. This isn't maybe terribly significant, however it did set a precedent that players could help on contests in the future. On May 26, 2020, a player named Vash on PC ended up making a dojo decoration basics tutorial to save himself explaining to people every time. While he didn't become a Warframe partner that we're aware of, he would end up becoming the go-to for learning dojo decoration and had a larger part to play later. Update 28, the Deadlock Protocol on June 11th, 2020 added the new Open Space Dojo Room, which was the largest open area with skyboxes that we could decorate so far. This also came with the new Solaris decorations, which were incredibly nifty. Hotfix 28.0.6 on June 24th doubled the capacity for open space from 800 to 1600 in comparison to the Inspiration Hall, which was 1400. The reason for this is the Open Space Room is almost 4 times the size of an Inspiration Hall, but for some reason it only had a little over half the capacity. Update 28.3.0 on August 12th, 2020, the Derelict Shift. Without a mention in the patch notes, slipped in the Orkin and Trotty audience chamber, however it had no picture in your Dojo Architect UI, and it also added the first batch of Orkin and Trotty decorations that people went nuts over. On September 24th of 2020, Vash put out a video with his bottled up frustrations about the funding process and how it takes about 2 hours to fund an open space room from start to finish. That's not including the time it takes to actually decorate it. My little rant put aside, DE has actually been really great with dojo stuff recently. They've been adding more rooms and faction decoration sets. But I really just wish that they could get around to updating the decoration UI and adding some more quality of life change. He thought he was screaming into the wind, but to his surprise, he got a reply from Helen on Twitter, Marcus on Reddit. Reb ended up even mentioning it on a primetime stream.
Today there was a post made about like tools to make the dojo building more streamlined, quality of life. Helen did reply, we are actually working on a bit of like a QOL package for dojo stuff. So Helen replied, has some information, and we'll have more info later on just fixing some of the, like when you build a lot, you hit the same frustrations over and over again. So we will fix up a few of those in the near future.
Funding was the basis for Vash's argument in the video, and an auto-fund option was added in the very next patch. It wasn't quite what he was asking for, however they did indicate that more changes were on the way. Well, Vash ended up reaching out to Helen on the forums to see if he could get a first look at the dojo changes that were coming, to give feedback and also to create guide videos in advance. And to further his surprise, she reached back out to let him know that because of his message, they were going to be putting together a QOL team from players to give feedback and actually test the changes that were coming to the dojo. dojo. This wouldn't be public knowledge until a little bit later, shortly after the Kawaii Dojo Discord launched, in order to replace the old IKEA frame Discord that had fallen into inactivity and disrepair. It was founded on the basis of helping new decorators learn and sharing ideas with other experienced decorators. Update 29.5 Deimos Arcana on November 19th, 2020 added a lot of stuff. It added the new infested chamber with 1600 capacity. It added the second wave of Entrati decorations, along with a new wave of infested decorations to go with it. They mentioned that there was going to be a resource rebalance that was reflected in the new decorations that were released. They also added the option to name rooms. They also added the option to rename teleporters. They fixed some exploits in the custom obstacle courses. They fixed the rotation bug, along with a slew of other bugs at the time. It wasn't mentioned, but it was also the first patch that was done with the help of the Dojo Quality of Life team, gathered by DE Helen. The group was announced in the Dojo Workshop Quality of Life changes on November 26th of 2020, where they promised that they would be changing how dojo construction worked. They would have red zone reduction and add custom spawn points, as well as a preview all option for unfinished decorations. They also said that they'd be adding skybox options for the open space room, placeable NPCs, along with Kuva Fortress and Cetus decorations. The Quality of Life group was formed from Ajangome and Vash from PC, 3Claw from PS4, OG Kuva Sage from Xbox, and Major Prime from Switch. Dojos were quiet for a while and left to stew with the changes they had already received, until March 5th when Helen posted the second Dojo Workshop covering exactly what would be coming in Update 29.10, which was Update 29.10.0 on March 19th, 2021 brought an insane amount of stuff for dojo decorators. It brought the Starlight Market, a Corpus Inspiration Hall type room. It brought 161 new Granum Corpus decor. It also removed the Clan Hall ranking order for prerequisites. It added a preview all function for decorations. They had red zone reduction, so you could build near doors or consoles. They added backdrops for open space, Inspiration Hall, and the observatory, starting with the Ceres, Deimos, Earth, Saturn, Venus, and Void backdrops. This patch also came with a slew of dojo fixes. Something new to 2021 is the TennoCon Dojo Showcase. Announced on April 22nd, they discussed a contest for all prior winners of the featured dojo contests. They would be choosing 10 winners for 2-minute segments during TennoCon. While this may not seem terribly significant and 2 minutes may not seem like a lot, that's a whole lot better than the 0 seconds dojos were getting any attention on during TennoCon any years prior. I would like to view this as dojos in general getting more recognition for what they're able to house, essentially, and what people have been able to do with them. At the time of this recording, it is June 28th. TennoCon is coming up around the corner, and we have a lot more dojo changes on the way. And I just thought I would put together this video to show people where dojos started, how shitty it was at the time, and where they've come. Because I personally believe that dojos have changed significantly in functionality and in purpose, and DE is trying to embrace where they are now.
But like, then that's what's mind-blowing, is like, I would say there's nothing groundbreaking about the dojo tools, but people can make this kind of stuff.
Well, it's interesting because, like, as we were looking to improve like dojos, and you know, Helen has a really good list of like quality of life things, and like our dojo decorating tools are literally like the editor tools. They are what our like and then, so say for instance, say games that have housing systems, you can't make a bad looking house in them because everything is prefab. Like, it's like, okay, here's like your tea set, and like it all comes together. So it's really hard to make something ugly. But in Warframe, I feel like it's really hard to make something that looks good because nothing is prefabricated out of the box. It's like, okay,
nothing
I guess
goes together.
Yeah, like you need to make it. Like it's very much more of a Lego with no manual thing, whereas like other games have like the beds and everything. Like we don't have that. The tools are nearly impossible to use, actually. Yeah, like they are like editor tools for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, it's not like you're gonna go like The Sims and you're gonna be able to make a perfect square room with a perfect, you know what I mean? It's like, no. Warframe gives you objects and you figure out what you're gonna make out of those. Like when I see dojo rooms that like they build an entire cathedral using like gallium or like whatever, I'm like, wow, like that was so smart, and like things like that. I'm like, that is a creative mind I do not possess, and the patience I do not possess.
Yeah, it's so impressive. Gotta love it. That's such a great way to boost the dojo artist by pointing out how easy it is to screw it up. No, I'm just saying, like, it takes not only, like, it's just so impressive, so beautiful.